Hello and welcome to Do You See What I See? I'm Yolanda Nava. Today's guest is author, publisher, and thought leader Armando Rendon. Welcome, Armando.
Welcome to you too.
This
Good
is
to see
so
you.
exciting. I'm so thrilled that we're getting to meet each other, and we talked on the phone the other day, and we're meeting today for this program. You've had an extraordinary background, and you've contributed so much to the Chicano Mexican American movement. And I'm just honored to have you today. We met through Dorinda Moreno online, and then again, Roberto Haro recommended you for this show, and I grabbed you, and here we are, and I'm delighted. Welcome, welcome. I'd like to ask you, there's so many things I want to talk to you about, but we'll start with your trajectory. You have done a very important work called Chicano Manifesto. It seems to be the topic of today. And I'm wondering what was going on in your life at the time when you created that document, began that writing.
Well, frankly, I was working at a federal agency, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and I had been doing a lot of traveling. I had been witnessing and meeting many of the leadership of that time, from Puerto Rico Gonzalez to Cesar Chavez to Reyes Tijerina, all the main players basically of that period. I met uh, people from all over the Southwest and even the Midwest. And I thought something was going on in the country. It was like late 1968,
Yeah.
early 1969. It struck me that, yeah, like I say, something was going on, and I kind of speaking to myself as I often do because I don't have anybody else that will listen to me. Um, I said, somebody should write about this. And I said, well, Rendon, why don't you do it? So I had never written a book before. I was in my late 20s by then. I had not ventured in that area, but I decided, yeah, I'm going to take a crack at it. Fortunately, I did find some contacts, good contacts. An editor at McMillan Company. They bought the idea, pitched a set of chapters, prospective chapters. They gave me a contract, and I started writing. In fact, I left the commission to work on that book. It took me about 4 months to do the first full draft of it. And from that point on, I basically went on my own as far as writing.
It's an extraordinary work, and you have an amazing website. I went through it and looked at it. I wanted to read every single thing that was there, but of course I couldn't. Excuse me. But the topic today came up in social media. I saw it on Dorinda's. It was on Substack, and the Dorinda had forwarded on to her list, which is one of the places I knew about you for many, many years as part of her Fuerza Mundial group. And we'll talk about that later because it was talking about, is it time to take another look at the Chicano movement differently. But before we go there, I want to move forward in your activities and your writing. You did a book called, uh, I want to say, Somos Unidos, Somos Uno, right?
Oh, well, I started
We are
a
one.
website
We are one.
magazine. I started a magazine called Somos escrito.
Yes, somos escrito, right. We are one. I'm thinking about it in English and trying to translate that backwards. Yes, somos escrito. Talk to me about that.
Well, again, um, I had been looking around for sources of writings by Chicanos and didn't really find very much. This was like 2009. I had retired around 2004 and trying to do some writing. And it struck me again that I couldn't find a magazine online that featured Chicanos and Chicanas, the whole breadth of the writing, the writers in our community. So I said again, I told myself, well, why don't you start a magazine? Um, and of course, by that time, we didn't have the web. Um, I started out by just contacting people that I knew, other writers around the country, and said, I'm starting a magazine. And I got a website set up called it Somos, escrito, and started getting material, just, from, like I say, friends. And they told other friends, other writers, and um, after a while, I was publishing regularly, sometimes daily, every 2 days, whatever. But that's how the magazine started. Now, the book publishing came around 2016. Again, I thought there was a dearth of one of the very few publishers out there that were Chicano. And I thought I should, try it. And I got some associates that will work with me, and we began publishing books. Up until now, I published around 14 books. Uh, and hopefully this coming year, I'll be able to publish another couple of books as well. So
That's
how it
very
happened.
exciting. Well, what you did, and this is something that's important for people, I think, to think about it, especially younger people, that there may be when you see a void, when you see something that, or you would like to see something, why not just jump in and do it? And I think that was part of the energy that we had back in the 60s and 70s and even into the 80s, where I followed my mother's dictum, which was if you see something that is unjust, it's your duty and responsibility to do something about it. And she told me that at 8 years of age, and somehow it's sunk in. And I've lived my life by those words, throughout my life. And if I've seen something, I've engaged in it. That's how I got involved in the Chicano movement. And those were rocking days, and those were difficult days because we had to buck heads with our own, male friends and students and activists. And it was a bit rocky at times, but it was wonderful because ultimately we all got together, and that manifested at the Chicano moratorium on August 29th, 1970. So that time was very exciting, don't you think? And
Yes,
into the teens even before that election in 2016.
right. I think it's kind of the same thing that I see happening now, and as you mentioned, and that is that there is a void, but it's of our own making, as far as the Chicanos are concerned. Uh, with regard to the energy that we felt and I saw and I felt it, I got involved with the kind of movement, is that we, over the last for several decades, actually, we depended on programs like Chicano Studies, and the big organizations, the nonprofit organizations, to maintain that energy and that direction of the Chicano movement. And there's something that's not happening now. And I think, again, it's not necessarily a void, but it's a kind of a slowing down. It's kind of we've lost traction. We've lost sight of the fact that, there's 40 million Mexican Americans in this country. That's a powerful force. We're not taking advantage of it. But the same, token, as I said, when I saw, well, there wasn't a magazine around, so let's create one. I think we're at a point where, as Chicanos and Chicanas around the country, we again have to educate ourselves, energize ourselves again, and pick up where we left off, 60s, 70s, and even into the 80s. But there is a drag on our community. A lot of it is from the politics that are going on. A lot of people have become well, well set. Um, there's a lot of people that are in academia. There's a lot of people that are in business and so forth, and in the entertainment business. That's not enough. So if anyone reads my book, they'll see that the sky's the limit. We have a tremendous energy that we need to tap again.
Well, we do, and I think there is renewed energy. There's renewed conversations that are beginning to go on. And I think the frustration of what's going on with ICE and everything else and the anti-brown, anti-immigrant, anti-Latino, Chicano, Hispano is permeating and it is affecting people. And it's turning people off and making them turn off their TVs and kind of tune out and try to just block it out and avoid it. But one has to confront, and that's why I'm so heartened by the No Kings Days. And I was at one by the end of March in Palm Springs. It was a beautiful event. It was peaceful. It was joyous. The speakers were very intelligent. They weren't screaming into the microphone. They were talking with us. And the crowd was just very loving. There were dogs there and children and babies on, fathers' backs and all of that. And it was just a very joyous event and very positive and inspiring. It really felt good to be there. In contrast to the Chicano moratorium in 1970 when we got tear gassed, and that was a horrific day and a frightening day. But it produced some changes and some results. It also kiboshed a lot of things too. So they're mixed bags. But I think the activities that you've engaged in are so critically important because, and I didn't know your full background until I really delved into your website. I had known of you, but I hadn't, contacted you. And so I'm glad that we, made the opportunity to talk today. I'm very excited also by your concept of your new project. And that is to create a Mexican American Heritage Day, February 2nd. Talk to us about that project.
Well, that again has come about because I saw that, and I have experienced this kind of a slowing down, the lack of interest, letting other people, do the job that we should be doing, and yeah, but for sure, the attack on our people has, I think, generated a lot of interest and a lot of action. However, it has to be channeled, right? We have to do something positive in order to channel that energy to something that's going to turn out as a positive for us. So I back in January of last year, I threw out the idea at a group. It's kind of a internet forum on Chicano issues called Platicas on every Sunday at noon. And I threw out the idea that I was tired of all these like special days for this and that. Even yogurt has a special day in the year. Chocolate chip cookies have a day in this country. And but as far as people, we have Cinco de Mayo, we have Hispanic Heritage Month, et cetera, all these different celebrations which don't speak to what Mexican Americans are all about and the direction where we should be moving. Anyway, I threw out the idea that we should have our own day. The Mexican Americans should have our own day. And I said, I would call it Mexican American Heritage Day. Heritage Day. And the day that I would recommend to have it take place and be celebrated on is February 2nd. Now, February 2nd has a sort of typical negative connotations to it. As many people know or should know, February 2nd is the date on which the Treaty of Guadalupe was signed in 1848. It ended the war of the United States against Mexico. As a result, the U.S. Took over on half of the territory that Mexico ruled at the time, including like other six entire states that are not considered U.S. states, parts of other states. Of course, that comes to most of the Southwest. Now, in that territory, there were about 70, 80, 90, 100,000 Mexican citizens. That was 1848. 178 years later, we numbered 40 million people.
Yes.
Now, what has happened during that period of time? We had a Chicano movement, but we have now this kind of force here, this energy, this whole population that can accomplish a great deal more, but we have to get organized. We have to recognize that, that we're here. We have a lot of potential. We cherish the values of being in a country that is, provides freedom. You can hold on to it. That has a constitution, that has, values and so forth that we can share and we cherish. However, there's more to it than that. Anyway, I decided that I threw that idea out. I had no idea what kind of response I would get. So all of a sudden, I had a bunch of people say, "Yeah, it's a great idea. Why didn't we think about it before?" Okay. So it's there now. Anyway, it's evolved since then. Last year, we had a number of programs that were developed or were based on already existing videos and whatnot. But on February 2nd of 2026, we had the first commemoration of February 2nd as Mexican American Heritage Day. That, as I say, it involved different kind of programming, some live streaming out of San Antonio, mostly videos that we had prepared beforehand, and we were it was provided then on YouTube and Instagram. This coming year, we now have the benefit of people gathering around again around the idea, and we formed an organization called the Mexican American Heritage Day Association. And by golly, I was asked to be chairperson, so I'm doing that now. I'm working with a great bunch of Rasta from we represent like 6 or 7 states in the country. And each one of them, I think, is fantastic personalities, and they have great backgrounds. I think we'll be able to tell them a lot more. The upshot is that I hope that Mexican American Heritage Day becomes not only the day on which we commemorate our existence and experience and culture and history, but that throughout the year, we'll be having events where we'll be publishing or sharing material of that nature, so that we can educate ourselves in my generation, as well as the generation in between, to include the youth and children of our community.
Well, this is very important because one of the things that's missing still in history, we have the new law that goes into effect this year, I think, of requiring ethnic studies, a year of ethnic studies in order to graduate from high school. And I think that's very important because there is a dearth of knowledge and truth in history that's been presented to us in schools. I mean, everything I've learned about Chicano, Latino, Hispano history has come from studying at UCLA. I was one of the first group that were part of MECHA that took classes, a couple of classes from Professor Juan Gomez Quinones, who was a professor of history at UCLA, who is now deceased. But the importance of that day is extraordinary, because the truth of what happened and why Mexican General Miguel Santana attacked the Alamo in the first place is not told truthfully. And the reason that the Mexican general, attacked the Alamo in Texas was because he did not want Texas to become a slave state. It had been part of Mexico, and he didn't want to see that happen. And so we're not taught that in our U.S. history classes in our schools, public schools here in the United States. And I remember when I was working for the governor in cultural affairs within in New Mexico, I was on the exhibit development committee for the El Camino Real historic site in the middle of the state, in the middle of nowhere. And no one on that committee that was developing the exhibit even mentioned the Mexican-American War. And I said, wait a minute, I have to tell you, this is an important, the Mexican-American War and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo are an important watershed, a critical watershed in understanding border history and the whole relationship of Mexicanos in the United States. And so we need to include that watershed as part of our museum exhibit. So we did that, and we brought in certain artifacts. I won't go into the detail of that, but that was very significant because it was in New Mexico. The Camino Real came from Tenochtitlan, Mexico City, north through the Jornada del Muerto in southern New Mexico, all the way up to San Juan de los Caballeros, now called Okeowinge, because the Native Americans in the state want to return to their, calling their sites the original indigenous names. And that's understandable. But we still have to tell the story of the road. So I love the fact that you're marking the day and that you're taking action to bring it into our awareness, because having this knowledge of history is very critical. So I honor, you're doing this, and I'm happy to participate any way I can with you on the project, because I really believe that if we taught history correctly, it would be healing, not only for Latinos, Hispanos, Mexican Americans, what Chicanos, it would be healing for everyone, because it would eliminate a lot of this false hatred and false misunderstanding of who we are in this country. We are a $4.1 trillion economic market. That's not little frijoles, small frijoles.
I have to add to Yolanda that going back to the February 2nd and the effects of the Mexican-American War, I mentioned earlier that was one of the negative aspects of February 2nd, because Mexico did lose a lot of land, but they have not lost the people who were here, and the people that are still here and growing. One of the aspects of having a Mexican-American Heritage Day in the United States, if you turn their history of February 2nd, and turn it around, make it positive, and make it a way to eliminate that border, that fictitious border that exists between Mexico and the United States, into something that, or certainly a day in which we can come together and begin to work together as people, because we have a common heritage. The U.S., the Chicanos here in the U.S., the Mexicans in Mexico. I think that's a very important aspect of the venture, is to turn history around, make it positive, think positive about it, and focus on it as opposed to any negative.
Well, yes, reframe it and tell the whole story,
Right.
the whole story. And that hasn't been done. And that's why this is such an important project that that you've created and that you're, expanding upon. Because I'm a history major. I was a history major at UCLA in graduate school. And I always learned from my professors, we have to learn from history in order to heal from history, and in order to not repeat history. And we keep doing it over and over and over again. You move forward, then you move back. You have a war and you do this, and then you do that. And it's crazy, because if we just got it and learned that there are people who contribute here, our Statue of Liberty has that beautiful poem, bring me your poor, your tired, your huddled masses, and so that is the history of our nation. And yet we're forgetting that in this day and age with the vitriol and hatred that's been thrown at us since 2015. Too much. I mean, it's endless. And these ICE raids that are going on, where anybody, citizen or immigrant, could be picked up on the road. I mean, from the streets, from their schools, from the churches, from their work sites. So there's a multiple purpose to this event that you've got going, this new project. because we do need to create the understanding of we were here. The United States came to us. I have people. I live in the Coachella Valley, near Palm Springs, and many of the people here, the Latinos here, have been here for 7 and 8 centuries. I mean, 7 and 8 generations.
Right.
So yeah, it's they've been here because it was once part of Mexico, and it was a very remote part of the desert. And so, a lot of people congregated here, and the world slowly came to the desert. And now you have all these developments of golf courses, et cetera, et cetera. But the history remains, it's here.
I can add, I guess another point upon that thing of note is that for some time I've been keep hearing or sensing reading into some of the material that comes out in newspapers and magazines and television and whatnot, news reports that Mexican Americans continue to be considered a migrant population.
Yes.
And that's been it's actually been built into our economy because we had the Macedo program, we have the H-2A program to bring in Mexican workers to till the fields. At the same time, we had deportations in the 50s and 30s of Mexican people, or citizens and non-citizens that were sent back to Mexico or deported. There was Operation Wetback.
Yes.
Which is the children name that we use, but the reality is that we have been here for thousands of years. My family, and one side of my family, we're from Coahuila. We go back. My grandmother was called Uteca, and my grandfather, in fact, was Kickapoo Indian, with probably some African blood, because I have I think about it in my DNA, and that's an evolution that's happened over generations. But it basically means that we have been here for thousands of years. If you think about it, we're not a migrant people. People have been here forever, and we need to make the most of it. And we owe it to the land and to our children, and certainly for my grandchildren. I want them to have a better world.
Well, we would certainly hope so, and many of us have been fighting for that. Let's just jump to that article that came out today, that was sent around today, about is it time to to look at the Chicano movement differently, reframe it. What do you think?
Well, I've been saying that for a long time, and one of the reasons that I started the magazine and book publishing, that we have to have our own sources of information. Promote our writers and artists, our culture. We have to know our history and pass it along to our children, pass it on to the rest of society. Because as you can tell, the rest of society has no idea who we really are. So we've got to make that very clear. So we're here to stay, and hopefully to make this world better. The only way we can do it is really get involved. And so appreciate you all for looking with us. I'd love other people to contact me, and look at our website. It's a very simple website, 22-Aztlan.org. 22-Aztlan.org.
Well, thank you for giving us that website, and also just going on your website and looking you up. There are many, many links there. There are many, many articles. There are books. There's a lot of material there that people can read to learn more about ourselves, and for non-Latinos to learn about us and the tremendous contributions we made in our history in the Americas, which precedes the Pilgrims at Plymouth Rock. The Spanish were here 100 years before Plymouth Rock. And so there's a lot of history, there's a lot of contribution, and it's ongoing. California is a thriving minority state, and the majority of that minority are Latinos.
And yes, and I listen, I really appreciate having a chance to talk to you about these issues, and let's work together. I appreciate that.
I would look forward to that, and God bless you, and thank you for all the work that you have done and that you are continuing to do. Gracias, Armando Rendon.
Thank you.
And to our audience, thank you for joining us today. Do you see what I see? I'm Yolanda Nava. See you next time.